Okay.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. This is the Commission on Police Practices of the City of San Diego, our monthly open meeting of Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. I'm Doug Case. I am the first vice chair, and our chair is on vacation, and so I will be chairing tonight's meeting. The purpose of the commission on police practices is to provide an independent investigation of officer-involved shootings and custody deaths and an unbiased evaluation of all complaints against the San Diego Police Department and its personnel in a process that will be transparent and accountable to the community. The commission will also evaluate and review SDPD policies, practices, training, and protocols and represent the community in making recommendations for changes. The mission of the commission is to hold law enforcement accountable to the community and to increase community trust in law enforcement, resulting in increased safety for both the community and law enforcement. And Charmaine, do you want to call the roll? And you're muted, Charmaine.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Case.
Present.
Commissioner Fitch.
Present.
Commissioner Holtrop.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Workman.
Here.
Commissioner Dent.
Here.
Commissioner Harrington.
Present.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Clark. I see her. She's here.
I'm sorry, here.
Noted. Commissioner Shea.
Present.
Commissioner Craver is excused. Commissioner Vaughn.
Present.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Pink. Commissioner Pink here.
It
Okay.
shows that she's
Oh.
muted.
Commissioner Pink is here. Anyone from Internal Affairs?
Yes, good evening. Captain Holden and Lieutenant Shablowski are here.
Excellent, thank you. That completes roll call.
Okay, our next item of business is the approval of the minutes, and those would be the minutes of our open meeting on March 23rd, 2021. Those were sent out with the meeting agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing that, can you call the roll for the approval of the minutes?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce is excused. Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Pink.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Next is a non-agenda public comment. Let me give the instructions for public comment. Public comment is a time for commissioners to listen only. They cannot respond to questions during the public comment period. Non-agenda public comment is an opportunity to address the commission on a matter within its jurisdiction, but not on the agenda for this evening. Please note that the commission can cannot discuss specific allegations against SDPD officer or can discuss them only during a closed meetings. If you would like to speak, you'll be asked to raise your hand when we call that item. And then when the chair calls on you, you can unmute yourself. And then you can have 2 minutes to speak to any item. Once the time is ended, you'll be muted. We ask that you try to limit the repetition to the degree possible. And note that the process for each of the public comment opportunities is when the item is called, the item will be introduced and explained. And then we will have a public comment, if there is any, and then we will accept public comment, and then we'll close public comment, and then have commission or discussion on the item. Okay, and so the first item is non-agenda public comment. If there is anybody who wishes to make non-agenda public comment, if you can raise your hand. Okay.
I see none, Doug.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So I don't see any raised, and so we can move on to unfinished business. So the first item is commissioned closed meetings for the month of May. I think our plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Charmaine, is to have a meeting on next Tuesday. And then we will go back to our regular schedule of having the closed meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays, unless there is a case that we need to complete by a deadline, in which case there'll be a additional meeting called. Is that correct?
That is correct, but we should also keep in mind that May 11th, we have our budget hearing from 2 to 5. So we don't really know how long that might go.
That's a good point. So normally we meet from what, 5 to 7 for our closed meetings. I'm wondering whether it might make sense to do it from 6 to 8 just to be safe. Would that create a problem for anybody on May the 11th to meet from 6 to 8 instead of 5 to 7? If so, raise your hand.
Yeah, I might have an issue with that, Doug. Nope, I'm wrong. Never mind.
Okay. And okay, let's do that just to be safe. And because the budget hearing is important. Okay, so now we're going to have some discussion on feedback on prioritization of case reviews, workflow, and staffing. And I also maybe want to combine that with item number 4 under case review, which is feedback on our new method of case presentation, where instead of reading the case verbatim, we have a summary with the essential items pointed out, and then we go into the discussion. And so I want to get feedback on that, but there also has been some feedback and concern related to the number of cases that we have outstanding, and the number of cases we have outstanding seems to be increasing. And so it has been suggested that we look at trying to revise how we write our case reports so that it's not quite as time intensive, and perhaps look at ways that the teams can more efficiently review cases. One comment that was made was it may make sense to assign one person the duty of looking at all the body-worn camera and all the interviews, and then pointing out to the other team members those items that are essential. And then another suggestion that was made in terms of the written case reports was that we would make them more along the lines of our audit reports, and so they are summaries that don't include all the details that we included in our case reports, but probably would, for category 1, would be more comprehensive than an audit report would be. And so kind of a way of streamlining and making the case reports so they're not as time intensive to prepare. And so with that feedback on either of those items, how you think that the new method of presenting our cases is working. We're getting through a lot more cases than we were when we read all the cases verbatim. And so would like feedback on that, and then suggestions on how we can make our work more efficient. And so if anybody wants to comment on any of those items.
My hand is up.
Okay, why don't I see whose hands are up? But go ahead and speak, Patrick.
So I think that the move not to read the cases verbatim, but to summarize them has been fairly miraculous for us. I think it's been transformative, not just in the number of cases we get through, but I have also noticed and felt that engagement is actually deeper because you're listening to someone describe. And I know that Nancy disagrees. I see you shaking your head, Nancy. But I feel like our meetings are more energetic. They're more engaged with one another. I feel like the discussion can really home in on points that matter. And, you know, I say this as some, you know, I spend my life in classrooms where students are expected to read materials before class, and many or most of them don't read everything they're supposed to read. So I'm extremely familiar with the tension of having to trust one another to do the reading in advance. And I'm familiar with the fact that not everybody has all, you know, not everybody gets through every word. So I get that there's a limitation there, but the meetings that we've had from the beginning of my appointment until last month when we switched, or whenever it was, you know, it was, frankly, it was often so difficult to stay present with a case and move between reading what's right in front of you as someone's reciting it out loud. I felt that it just sapped the energy of attention out of me, and it seemed like out of others as well. I am a huge fan of this. I think we can always tweak it to make it better. But I think it encourages engagement, presence with one another, listening. I think it's much easier to listen closely when someone is speaking than it is when someone is reading word from word something that's right in front of you. So that's my opinion. I'm a very, very big fan.
Okay, next I have Nancy.
I'm going to ask Patrick, how much time did you spend preparing for this evening's closed meeting?
How much time did I spend? You mean before the
Yes.
meeting? How long did it take me to read?
Yes.
For today's meeting, I would say I spent about an hour or less reading, half an hour, 45 minutes. I'm a pretty fast reader, and I'm accustomed to reading closely. But yeah, I'd say for this week's meeting, I mean, the longest case on the docket was a case that I wrote. So
Yeah, that was a good lucky thing.
yeah, last week I would say I spent about at our last meeting, I would say about an hour and a half max.
So last time I spent 4 hours on those cases, and I resent that extra 4 hours. I have trouble with that. I think part of the problem we had with reading them was we weren't enforcing the rules about writing them and making them concise and point to the point and getting rid of unnecessary parts of the report. That's just me because I grew up on this board with the way we were doing it. So I know I'm going to lose this battle, and I will just quit talking about it. I'm not happy with it. It takes me a lot of time. I read very slowly. So there it is.
Okay, Kevin,
So I am in favor of this method, the way we kind of can prepare, and also I like that I can just open up the file as it's being read and look at pertinent information again, or review certain sections as questions come up. It makes it a lot faster for me. The other thing I wanted to mention though is we are an audit review model, and I know that later, once we have investigators, we might change the way we either we might continue to write these reports or just rely on the ones that are written by the commission investigators. But the way it currently is, I want to recommend that we be able to, and the reason for this is I think that the number is 98% of the time, or 96.8% of the time we agree with IAA. And that's not that we just agree how it's written. That doesn't include how many times we've gone back to IA and found other findings or had things changed. And then once it's now changed and current, now we agree. So that number looks like we just agree all the time, which is not true. But because we do already do all that, I think that I want to see this move to where we can only write a report that's this long if we disagree with something with IA, or we find an other finding that they didn't have and wouldn't add. Then it makes sense to do it. Otherwise, we're rearranging the words and writing exactly what IA already wrote out in their massively detailed reports. Some of these are 10, 15, 20 pages long. And then we're now going in there, reviewing all the file, and then writing another report saying the same thing and that we agree. So if we're an audit and review model, I think we should be able to really quickly summarize that we reviewed the entire file, we read the entire IA report, we watched all the BWC, we listened to all the interview, the testimony, the complaints, line by line items were addressed specifically. There was evidence, was not, it's unfounded or exonerated, etc. And then check that off that yes, it was correct. And then only write something when we need to write something. So I want to put that out there today, because the way it is right now, how many cases were before COVID, during COVID, and now they're stacking up after as well. We're also changing to partially being online and still some things needing to go to IA. The deadline for IA's 1 year mark's been moved to like 10 months. So it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't feel tenable to me to continue to have to write 9 to 10 to 15 page reports saying the exact same thing that's already in the IA file. So I want to move that we make these summaries only, and only write a huge report when we disagree or find another finding. You're muted, Doug.
Duke.
Am I off mute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I listened to everything that Patrick.
Now you're frozen.
Turn off your video.
Yeah, why don't we come back to Duke in a second, and we'll go to Maxine.
Of course that would happen. The whole thing just shut down and now it's back up again. Am I here?
Okay, then go ahead and finish, Duke. Go
Okay,
ahead.
let me be real quick then. Okay, so I just wanted to take a different tack. I listened to Patrick, Nancy, and Kevin, and I guess I'm from the new guard. So all of us, we don't really know the difference. We're just being told like, this is the structure of the report. And it did occur to me that we were basically taking the IA findings and then just sort of rearranging the words, as Kevin said. So my thing is the fidelity to the community. Because when I saw this recent news report with the, the one lawyer who helped pass Measure B, it occurred to me that on the one hand, I was like, man, I mean, the amount of time that it takes to get through one case is the reason why we are where we are. And the other hand, we're waiting to get the funding and everything in place so that we can have our own investigators. So we got those two things sort of sitting on the shelf. And I think the priority from my perspective should be the fidelity to the community. And in order to do that, we have to get through these things quicker. So these sort of protocols from the past, I respect them, but I think we might be in a different place now that everything's online and you can just sort of click, copy and paste. And so I agree with it and would just add, to the extent that we can, being able to listen to the audio remotely. I mean, you know, we're all sort of cleared, if you will. So I'd love it if we could, you know, fix that component, and then the ability to be able to sort of, you know, more easily copy and paste policy instead of, you know, getting stuck in this minutia of like, you know, trying to type every single word out. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, next I see Maxine.
I totally agree with Nancy, and I don't think we're doing due diligence to the cases when we're racing through them. I think we need to be as thorough as we used to be, and that's what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for a race around the track. I signed up to do due diligence, take my time, listen to what everyone else was reading, and I was reading. So I agree with Nancy.
Okay, Poppy.
I want to apologize. I'm going to keep my video off because I have the Zoom gremlins today. So I'm seeing I'm hearing lots of garble. So hopefully this is better. Can you hear me, Doug?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I would like to just make a couple of comments from the perspective of the executive team, and just to note for the rest of the group that, you know, that team is meeting weekly to talk about ways that we can rise to the challenge of increasing workflow, decreasing resources, new members, remote case review, changing dynamic from board to commission. So many simultaneous changes that are calling for us to get comfortable in a really uncomfortable context. And so I think it's important for us to bear in mind that we do have to consider the efficiency of our work, that we do have to work smarter, not harder. We have to find ways to be efficient while maintaining, Duke, I love your language, while maintaining a fidelity to our roles as representatives of the community. And that's a tension, right? It's not one or the other, it's both. And so I think, you know, I know that one of the things we talk a lot about is looking for ways that we can do that, you know, working more efficiently and appreciating, extending our appreciation to the commissioners for their flexibility, even when the decisions that are being made might not align with, you know, how you want to do the work. And I agree with those folks, Kevin and Patrick, and others who have appreciated the change in case review. Just personally, I've appreciated that. I don't think it's about watering down our review. I think it's about moving through the cases more efficiently. So those were my comments to this point. And then I also just wanted to make sure, Charmaine, that you're going to talk about the actual case numbers so that we get a real feel for what it is that we're talking about in terms of numbers of cases and what we expect coming our way.
Okay, we discussed at our cabinet meeting of having this discussion here and then referring the matter to the rules committee to come up with a recommendation for the board. And so we will do that, and I'll make sure that.
Doug, I'm sorry, in the chat, I just noted.
I'll address that in a second, Patrick.
Okay.
And so we will have a rules committee meeting, and we'll make sure all the commissioners are notified, so all those that have an interest in this item can speak. As Patrick mentioned, we have a person who wishes to speak, and I will allow it this time, but I want to repeat what I said at the beginning about the rules for public comment. Public comment is not an opportunity to engage in discussion with the board. On each item, we introduce the item, and then we provide an opportunity for public comment. The public speaks, and then the board members engage in discussion. And so we'll go ahead and call on Yasmin Obeid, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, and you can go ahead and comment on this item. But for the rest of the meeting, if people can comment after the item is introduced and before the board discusses it.
I'm really sorry. That actually was by.
Oh, so you don't want to speak? Okay, no problem. Okay, sorry about that. There's no problem at all. Okay, and so looking at the rest of the items in this case review, the status of discipline cases, there are several discipline cases that have been sent out to the teams, and we haven't had any read at the last couple of meetings. And so if you have discipline cases in your file, if you can complete those as soon as possible, and so we can get those presented. I heard comment regarding the remote access of cases that we still need to resolve the issue of the audio, and hopefully that can be resolved. And then the last item here is IA office hours and schedule. And Captain Amato, not Captain, I gave her a big promotion, Sergeant Amato, wanted me to remind you that she is not in the office on Friday. And so if you can contact her Monday through Thursday regarding scheduling office hours for the weekend. And then if anything changes, if you could call her on her cell phone so that she knows that a team that has made a plan to come in isn't going to show up, because sometimes IA staff make an extra effort to be there just to accommodate the commission. And if the commissioners don't show up, that creates some issues. Okay, so I think we're done with that item. And so we move on to item C. We also discussed this at the cabinet meeting yesterday. And the general sense was we were having a hard time finding a day when the entire commission could get together. And given our workload right now, the consensus was to try to do our work plan and our tactical plan, which is normally what we try to have as our outcome of the retreat. Try to accomplish that in our board meetings themselves. We also at our retreats also try to have an educational component, and maybe later on we can do an educational component where we have a speaker. But unless there is a strong objection, we are not going to plan a work retreat in the immediate future. And instead we'll, I think, introduce the work plan and the tactical plan at our open meeting in May, and then vote on it in June. Is that correct, Charmaine?
Yes, we should have an actual draft of the work plan, because I sent it out. I believe I sent out a draft this past weekend to the commissioners. So we should have revisions. If anyone has revisions to it, please send them to me, and I'll prepare the draft for the May meeting. And then once that draft is done, then we can work towards the tactical plan.
Okay, and it's especially important that all of the committee chairs take the time to look at the work plan, because the work plan is basically divided into the committees. And so obviously anybody can provide input, but especially if the committee chairs can look at their section to make sure that it's complete and accurate, that'll make it much more offensive, much more efficient.
Yes, we have a lot of activities going on right now, especially with the transition from CRB to CPP. So it's good to highlight that and capture that for transparency purposes. I took a first stab at it sort of last week to revise it and try to capture as much as I could remember. So that's why I need feedback from the commissioners.
Okay, so move on to new business. The first item of new business is attendance and participation of the San Diego Police Department during our closed meetings. We set a new practice at the beginning of the year, and the current practice is that the department is present for the presentation of the case and is available to answer any questions. And then on Zoom, they are put into the waiting room, and the comments are made And then the vote is taken while they're in the waiting room. And then we reconvene if there's any team concern comments, those are presented at that point in time. We've had considerable feedback from commissioners that they would like to have the department there during the comments, because sometimes the comments require a response, and sometimes they want to make sure that the police department hears those comments unfiltered. And it also creates some awkward situations. It's not quite as awkward on Zoom because it's easy to move them into the waiting room and back. But when we start meeting again in person, that was going to create some difficulty with the new system that we set up. And so we agreed to put it on the agenda for this this month's meeting to get feedback from feedback on the new system. But before I call on the commissioners, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak to this item, raise your hand.
Kate has her hand up, Doug.
Okay, and so Kate, if you can go ahead and speak. Is Kate unmuted?
I think so.
There you go. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I was really surprised to see this on the agenda. I think, speaking as, someone who's been working on this issue for a long time, as you all know, it would be a huge mistake to make a change in this from the community's perspective. I mean, I can tell you that for several years while we were working on Measure B, I made presentations at all kinds of community groups, at town councils, and I probably made 50, 60, 70 presentations. And whenever the mention came up about the fact that the STPD was involved in the closed sessions where you were having conversations and making decisions about, where you were going to be on this case, jaws just dropped. I mean, people simply could not believe that that was happening. And it was a major issue at the community forums. I think Patrick will probably back that up. It would be a major mistake for this new interim commission that still needs to gain the trust of the community. The community has a lot of questions about why it's still interim and we don't have, new commissioners and the real commission yet. So it would be a huge mistake, in my opinion, to make a change. I understand the issues that are coming from the commissioners, but I'm just telling you that you've got to figure out a way to keep it this way, or you're going to have an outraged community on your hands.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Yes, Cat Blue.
Okay, Cat, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to say a couple quick things about the presence of police officers or other professionals from the police agencies. The concern with police involvement at the meetings is, one, I noticed at a previous meeting, a recent meeting, they were giving very disrespectful looks during Tasha Williamson's presentation when she spoke, and things like that just don't seem appropriate. But the bigger concern to me is that they are there to answer your questions and give further details reflecting their point of view, their side of things. But then what about the other parties involved? Are they able to do that as well?
Okay, any other members of the public wish to speak? Okay. If not, we'll move on to a commissioner comment, and I think Nancy has her hand up first.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
The public has a hard time understanding the relationship and the collaborative nature of the relationship between the commissioners and the police department. They aren't there as advocates in our closed meetings. We've already gone through all of that with them in developing our reports before we get to the closed session. The closed session is so that the board can deliberate on the points and the issues that the team has found. And there are times when we need to hear, well, less we need to hear, but the police department needs to hear the comments from the other board members that aren't reflected in our report. And the only way they're going to hear all of the comments from the other commissioners is if they're present. Years ago, people used to feel like they wouldn't feel free to comment and say things in front of police present in the meetings. But the board has evolved in the last 10 years, and the board now has what I will call a backbone, and people are willing, I think to a person, are willing to speak up and say their mind, even when police are present in the room, when we're in meeting in person. It's a much more interactive relationship than we're able to explain. And there are many, many issues that this board discusses that it's a good thing for the police to hear and hard for us to get those ideas to them outside of our meetings. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, so it looks like, hold on a second here. Kevin, I'm sorry, Kevin, Patrick was next, then Kevin.
Sure.
Kevin,
Patrick,
go
you
ahead.
wanna go?
Kevin, I'll go after you. Go ahead.
No, no, it's okay.
All right. Yeah, I was also, I think, surprised to see this on the agenda, especially given that we made the change so recently. And again, we made this change not just this wasn't just, you know, a random request that the community made. It was a major top line, frontline issue. And you know, the way that the meetings currently work is that internal affairs officers are present for the questions so that they can respond to questions. And then the discussion is commissioners only, which is called executive session in for any other body. And at any point, if we need clarification on something, we can refer those questions out or call them back in. You know, if there are things said during that discussion that we believe IA should hear, then the solution is to take notes on them and to convey them to internal affairs. I think especially during an interim commission period, when we have made we made this change. We didn't make it of our own initiative. We made this change specifically because the community asked us to several months ago. And for us as the interim commission, after just a couple months, to just determine that we're not going to keep going with it, rather than trying to find another solution to getting important discussion items to internal affairs, which again can be done by taking notes and then the commission agrees to hand them off, is a huge mistake. And I would say that if the interim commission is serious about reconsidering this new practice, then I believe that before any change gets made, we need to go back to the community. And I would be happy to hold a roundtable if that's how the interim commission votes, so that those interim commissioners who feel this way can explain to the community why the vote is going this way, and then ask for feedback from the community. It astounds me that we would reverse this after acting on the community's request and sticking with it for only a couple months. It doesn't make any sense to me if we're going to continue to build good faith with the community, and if we truly want to remain accountable and transparent to the community we represent. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, next is Kevin.
Yeah, so I want to kind of reiterate what and agree with what Nancy was saying. And I understand the level of compassion and empathy to say, let's go back to the community. And again, that's some members of the community, a very small number. Not that it means any less, but it is a small number. But going back to what Nancy said, who's been on this board probably all of our years put together, it is appropriate, in my view, that internal affairs be there for these vast discussions. They do not interfere, and they never have. They listen their time, and then we ask to speak. So I think it is important, if we're talking community issues and problems that we see with the department or specific policies, of course we can go through channels and get them a policy and leave notes for them. But it doesn't convey the emotion, the urgency, the sense of how it felt, what we're actually internalizing. But when they're there and present, they do hear and feel that. And we've seen changes happen because of that. We can't have an us versus them mentality. We can't be divided, where we're trying to get everyone together, right? So why would we move people out of the room to have a discussion about them, and then move them back in and then give them pieces of it? Just doesn't make sense. And so to reiterate something Nancy said earlier is, and it's not in a rude or condescending way whatsoever, but the community isn't there. Neither are these other people who have spoke about this topic, and they've never been on the board. They've never been in these meetings. They don't know what happens in there. They do not know. So you can't then say, we heard something and we feel something and we think you should do this, but you're not there. So if you're not in the room hearing the cases, going through the arguments and the discussions, seeing the things that can change and can happen, then you just don't know. So someone can hear of something and be appalled by it, but until they have all the information and all the facts and the experience of that thing, they just don't know. And I think it's incredibly collaborative. It is, and there's nothing secretive. There's no fear of speaking the truth about the incident. We've all discussed these things openly with them sitting in the room, and it's gone just fine. Sometimes I've felt I'm about to disagree with something on the police's side, and I feel a little nervous about it. But that's where the courage steps in. You're representing certain districts and community. That's what you were appointed to do, and you just have to do that thing. And so I find that it's incredibly useful, and transparency is key on all sides, not just some sides. And I think that moving them out of the room is a huge mistake.
Okay, next is Ernestine. You're muted, Ernestine. Ernestine Smith. There you go.
I got it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay.
The discussion about having the officers leave the room during the comments, but they can stay for questions. The comments are really where we have some real serious discussions about, and they need to be there for that because maybe the officer was within policy and they handled it correctly, and they no discipline because they did that part of it okay. But maybe while they were doing that, they just acted like a jerk, They didn't have to have that kind of attitude, even though they may have made a stop that was correct. So many, many times very heated comments and discussions come up, and the department really needs to hear that, because even though the officer's not going to be disciplined, maybe their supervisor could do some counseling with them. And we've talked about a lot about having some counseling and mediation with officers and perhaps the public. So I've always thought that they need to be there for that very same thing about the discussion and talk about all that behavior. That's it.
Okay, Marty Workman.
Yeah, hi. Now, aside from Nancy, I've been on the board longer than anybody else. And some of the best meetings I've been to is when we've had serious discussions in front of the police and letting them know how we feel. Now, the purpose of reviewing these complaints and then presenting it is to determine if the police acted within policies that were in effect at the time of the incident. It's not to discuss changing the policies. That's done with the policy committee and recommendations. But sometimes we sit down and we tell the police, I know it was lawful, but it was awful. And we tell them when they're there that we realize it's within policy, but that is crazy. And we let them know how we feel. And I strongly believe that the police should be there when we make these comments.
Okay, Poppy.
Yeah, I just want to make a note that I support and affirm Patrick's comments and Kate's comments. I think in particular, we heard community feedback very recently as part of the change process from board to commission. This change process is necessarily a painful one. We cannot continue doing things the way we've always done them because the charge for the commission is a new charge and a different charge. I think it would have been wise of us to have this conversation before we made the initial move to removing during portions of our case consideration representatives from San Diego Police Department. Now it looks like, we've tried it out for a couple of meetings. We don't like the way it went. We're gonna bring them back. And I think that it sends, even with all best intentions, it sends a really poor message to the folks, the community members who are paying close attention to what's happening right now on the interim commission. So that really is my feedback and my perspective on this.
You're right, Poppy. I should have been at the meeting to think about it, talk about it then. This is Ernestine.
And Ernestine, that's not, I'm looking in the mirror when I make that comment. I hold myself accountable for not having a more thoughtful conversation before we made the change. So it wasn't an accusation to anyone. It's just
no, I definitely don't take it that way, Poppy. Really.
Okay, I see Duke has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just going to be very quick because I know you said you wanted to, get. I think everything everyone said was. Oh no, is my Zoom going to quit again?
We can still hear you. Well, no.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I mean, I'm trying to get a sort of a check the pulse. Like, is this happening, or are we just talking about it, or is this going to be the next?
Unfortunately, can you complete your last sentence, Duke, because we didn't hear.
Tonight is just Zoom. Oh, I'm on. Okay, let me not curse. I was about to curse. No, I'm just asking. Are we doing this at the next meeting? Or are we just talking about this? I'm trying to get a gut check on what is happening here.
Okay, well, we'll decide that after everybody speaks. I'm not hearing a consensus yet, and so I see a couple of commissioners have their hands up who've already spoken. I'm not sure if they want to speak again or just didn't remove their hands. Patrick and Nancy.
Yeah, very briefly. Look, I think there's a lot of good intention in this discussion, and I want to acknowledge that. Everyone who's spoken has strong feelings about this, and they have strong feelings because of their experience in these meetings. I do want to correct one thing. The community members who have shown up to make their voices heard about this throughout this entire process are not just a small community. I want to acknowledge over 100 different community groups, most of whom don't work together, aren't collaborating groups, came to these roundtables. And it isn't the case that everyone speaking doesn't know what they're talking about. Many of these folks are previous CRB members, former NACOL presidents, people who have been on CLRB and other oversight boards. It simply isn't the case. And those who haven't been on a previous oversight board have been coming to CRB meetings and so on, at least as long as Nancy has. So these aren't folks developing quick opinions about this. And these are not universally folks without experience that is equivalent or greater than the experience we have as people sitting here. Again, there are clearly a lot of opinions here. And if this interim commission is going to consider making a change, I think this needs to be a longer process. It took so long for the community to get this perspective to us in a way that we could hear. I'm really uncomfortable, independent of my own opinion, with switching things up again and going back on what we changed just a couple months ago. That's it.
Okay, and Nancy, did you want to speak a second time?
Yes, please.
Okay, briefly.
This is a conversation that's been going on since I got on the board. And when I got on the board 12 years ago, there were a lot of people that I would call timid, and they felt like they couldn't speak in front of police officers. And so there was discussion at that time, and has been ever since I've been on the board periodically, about not having the police officers in our closed meetings. Over the years, the people on the board have become more, how do I want to say it, have gotten more willing to speak up. All of the people on the board, as far as I know right now, don't hesitate to tell, and I'm sure Captain Holden would consider this true, don't hesitate, don't hold back when they talk to the police. And it's usually in our team conferences with them. And we settle things a lot in that environment, but it is also important for the police to hear it from the whole board. Like Ernestine was saying, if there's something that the team disagrees with, and then you bring it to the whole board and you hear everybody on the board has some input and supports that position, it's way more impressive and gets their attention. And I think it's important for them to hear what we have to say. I don't think they are not, as a rule, I'm not going to make it absolute, but for the most part, they are not advocating at all in our closed meetings. Their advocacy is in the meeting with the teams when they're trying to sort through what the team is going to put in the report. Once we get the report written and bring it to a closed meeting, there's no advocacy, there's for most part not an advocacy role for them. They are listening and they will answer questions. It's way more controlled than it used to be. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Kevin, did you want to speak a second time?
Yeah, it was just briefly that I know that the people that were previously on the board had that opinion, and that was still just a few people, and they're no longer here. And we still haven't heard anything that would exclude the police from that conversation. There's nothing that we're saying or doing there. It's not like we're giving them a leg up by telling them our opinion on something we dislike, and we're not saying something that is confidential or secretive that they don't know about. So there really just is no part of it, and we have everything to gain from them hearing these opinions. So that's it.
Okay. I did have a member of the public who came in after public comment was ended, but she did want to put an item in the chat, and I told her she could put it in the chat, but public comment is ended. So at this point in time, My recommendation is that we refer this back to the cabinet for a recommendation of how to proceed. I don't think we have a consensus here. And I think we need to give some further consideration to the process of coming up with a decision of how to proceed. And so unless there is a objection, I'm going to refer this issue back to the cabinet to decide how to proceed on this issue, because it's very clear that we have divided opinions. I have heard some suggestions of ways to accomplish the goals of both methods, and perhaps we can do that. I don't want to refer it to the Rules Committee until we have a better process defined. And so unless there's an objection, I can refer this back to the cabinet to decide how to proceed. Okay. And hearing no objection, then we'll refer this back to the cabinet and move on to our next action item, which is the modification to the mayor's proposed budget on the Commission on Police Practices. I think everybody here is aware of the mayor's budget, and we sent out with the agenda several proposed amendments to the initial budget that the transition committee recommended. And then at our transition committee last week, we made some additional changes, and then our chair emailed me with an additional change. And so we need to have the commission officially vote to approve our budget recommendations, so they're coming from the commission and not just the transition committee. And so if I can share my screen. It says you cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing. Oh, Charmaine, you need to take off the agenda. Okay, and then hold on a second here. Share screen. Hopefully this is the right one. Okay, so can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes.
And so what I have on the screen here is the budget with several items that are highlighted. And the ones that are in blue were the original changes recommended from the transition committee. The ones that are in red were the changes that we made at our meeting last week. And then I will tell you, let me move faces away so I can do that. And so the changes that we made are, I'll just go through these one by one. The supervising investigator, we recommended the supervising investigator start on September 1st rather than January 1st to give them time to prep cases and to be involved in the hiring of the second investigator, which would begin on January the 1st. And so even though we don't anticipate being able to do investigations on September 1st, we thought that it was important to get the supervising investigator on board by then. The second item, hold on a second here. Oh, I'm getting a message to scroll up. Oh, thank you, Charmaine. So let me go back to the very top. The first item there, or it's item number 3 on your screen there, is the executive director salary. We're recommending a salary of $180,000 as opposed to $122,000, which was put in the initial budget, which was based on Charmaine's current salary. The reason being is that $180,000 is the salary that is given to the executive director of the Ethics Commission. And we will have more than twice as many employees as the Ethics Commission, and we will have a board, assuming that the implementation ordinance is as we recommended, that also will be 3 times as large as the Ethics Commission. And so given the duties that will be required and the additional duties beyond what the current executive director does, we thought that it would be equitable to have a salary that was comparable to that of the Ethics Commission. So that's why that first item was changed there. I already went over item number 5. Item number 6 is simply changing the investigators to exempt. Human Resources told us that those positions needed to be exempt. Exempt means they're not an hourly position. Okay, and then the next item we're in color is item number 8, which is the budget analyst. And there again, we decided that it would be helpful to get that person on board sooner rather than later. And the soonest we actually can get somebody on board would be September 1st, because the policy analyst is in an exempt position, and exempt positions actually have to be created by ordinance, and they have to first go through a civil service commission process. And so that's why the earliest we can get an exempt person on board would be on September 1st. And I think that's all the items we made in terms of the personnel. The item number 17 was subject matter consultants. It had $20,000 there. We thought that that may be too low. And subject matter experts would be like use of force experts, mental health experts, and so forth, that are called in to deal with a specific case, or it could even be a subject matter expert that is coming in to help us with the policy recommendation. And so we changed it from 20,000 to 30,000 for the current fiscal year, which would end in June 30th, and then increased it to $40,000 in the next fiscal year, when our investigations will be going hopefully full speed ahead. Then the next item there is a new item, which I recommended, and the transition committee agreed, that we put into our budget an additional $200,000 for contract investigators. And so these would not be employees, these would be investigators that we would contract as needed. And so at this point in time, we don't know what the workload is going to be. And if the workload is greater in terms of the number of cases that we need to review, or if the time required to do the investigations is greater than what our staffing is, I think it's important that we be able to hire, on a case-by-case basis, additional contracted investigators to handle those cases. The next item was conference registration fees, and I think it was $2,500. We tripled that, and that was to allow more people to be able to attend, both staff and commissioners to attend the NACOL. And the same thing with the travel and conferences. I don't have the previous budget. Maybe I do. I can go back to sheet 1. Yeah, so it was 9,824. So we basically recommended doubling that line item. And a cellular phone, we increased to, let's see. I think we increased it from 1,300 to 3,697, which is basically tripling it. With the understanding we may have to have additional staff who will be required to have staff cell phones. And transportation allowance, we put in $2,500, which would be for staff. So if an investigator has to go out to the field, our community engagement coordinator, who is going to be our assistant executive director, needs to go to a public meeting, etc. we would have money to cover their mileage. And then the item that we didn't include here, but that Brandon emailed me from his vacation in Costa Rica about was the software. Where is that?
Line 24, Doug.
Thank you. I learned that the software we were talking about is basically licensed software where you have to renew the license every year. And so it's not like the old days where you would buy something in a box and you would pay for a certain number of users. It's a software that would have to be paid an annual fee. And of course you would get the tech support along with that. And so I guess my recommendation is that we make for fiscal year 23, the same as it is for fiscal year 22. And so just so people understand, the first yellow column is our current budget year, and it only starts from May 1st. And then the second yellow column is the upcoming budget year, which we're going to have our hearings on, and that will be the year that begins on July 1st of this year and ends on June 30th of next year. And then fiscal year 23 will be the year that starts on July 1st of 2022. And then the transition committee also recommended that at our budget hearing that we recommend the city council adopt a policy to allow volunteer commissioners to receive a childcare and mileage reimbursement to attend meetings and other activities. And that would require a change in policy, but we got significant public feedback along those lines, and we wanted to make that recommendation. And so I'm going to go ahead and change the line 24 to $35,000. Oops. And make that blue.
Doug, right now you've got a period. It needs to be a comma.
Yeah,
Oh.
it doesn't look like 35,000. It looks like $35.
Okay, 35,000, and then and I guess that's a change since then, so I'll put that as red as well. Okay, and so the transition committee has spent a lot of time working on this, and hopefully this will meet your approval. And so I will entertain a motion. And I'm sorry, before we go to entertaining a motion, I will go to public comment on the budget. So if there's any public comment, that people can raise their hand.
There's one hand raised.
Okay. And I'm not seeing it. Can you go ahead and tell me who it is? And that person can go ahead and speak.
It's Andrea St. Julian, and I will click allow to talk.
Okay, Andrea, please speak.
Thank you. I actually had my hand up from the last item, but I do have a couple of comments, just some things I'd like to raise that I'm a little concerned about. I'm a little concerned about the salary for the general counsel. And also, you know, when it appears that you're bringing the general counsel on. I have to say that although you all may not realize it, you're making a lot of legal decisions right now in terms of how the commission is being formed. And I know you do have counsel who also happens to be counsel, I think, for the Ethics Commission that you rely on to some degree. But that is not necessarily the person who, or the type of attorney who really should be your general counsel. And I think you really need staff, your own staff attorney. And to get the kind of staff attorney you need, I think you are going to need them to pay them more.
Okay. So any other public comment? And so I guess there's two issues there. One is the salary for the general counsel, which is $100,000. And I will note that we increased significantly our outside counsel contract from $25,000 to $180,000 because of that very reason that we think we're going to need additional legal assistance in the upcoming year. We did not put the general counsel hiring until June of next year because we thought that it was important for the new executive director and the new commission to be involved in the hiring of the general counsel. And so that was the reason for that. And so Ernestine has her hand raised. Are you gonna make a motion or are you gonna make a comment?
Is that Ernestine Smith? Because I don't know how to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. So your hand is up and I guess your hand is now down, and is Kevin?
I put it down for you, Ernestine.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and you can put it down by just clicking on it. Click on reactions tab, and the same place where you raise it, it gives you a chance to lower it. And Kevin,
Okay, we'll have to have an in-service on.
And Kevin, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I just had a question about the salary for general counsel. That's 100,000 per year.
Right.
Isn't that a little low?
That was the comment that Andreas St. Julian was making. I will say that the time that that figure was developed, it was in relation to the executive director's salary, because we didn't want to have a salary for a council that exceeded that of the executive director. But if we can entertain a motion to change the amount of the salary, and the salary, and in the city's salary range, they have a very wide. There's not a specific salary for general counsel like there is on some of the others, where there's a specific classification that has a very wide range. And so if somebody wants to make a motion to
so moved.
Okay, I need to have a number.
$1 million. No.
I mean, I would feel like at least 150.
How about so if executive director is 180, why don't we say 165?
Is that a motion? That your motion?
It is. I move that we change the independent counsel staff base salary to 165 with the fringe adjusted accordingly.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, and I can check with the Department of Finance to see what the fringe would be. Okay.
We are getting a comment though that 180 would be better. So I wonder if I should change. I'm going to amend my motion to 180.
Are you sure? I think that we ought to have a distinction between the executive director and the general counsel salary. I mean, and part of the purpose is that it will save money. And so if we're telling the city council that we want $180,000 and we're going to hire general counsel to save money, and then we put a salary in plus the fringe, that kind of spoils the argument. And so I think it makes more sense to keep it at the number you gave, which is significantly higher than $100,000. But are you willing to keep it? Are you willing to change it, keep it 165,000?
I guess so. I understand the logic because independent counsel reports to the executive director, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We can do this two ways. We can either do this by consensus and vote on the entire budget together, or we can vote separately on the general counsel. So let me try this to expedite things. Is there anybody who has an objection to changing the general counsel to 165 instead of 100? Okay, if you do, raise your hand. And Kevin, is your hand up for a different reason? Oh, okay. And Duke, is your hand raised for a different reason?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were in discussion because I had a quick question.
Okay, well, is it on this issue or another question?
It's on the entire budget.
Okay, then let's finish this. And so I'm not seeing any objections. I'm going to change that to one. Oops, why is it doing that? 160 and and I'm just going to highlight the whole thing in blue because I have to figure out what the prorated would be. As I'm just going to put that in blue for the time being, and then I'll fix it before we send it on to the city. Okay. Oops, what did I do there? Let me undo it. Okay, and Duke.
So this is a question about the entire budget?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, not a question, comment, right?
Yeah, we can do either one. Go
Okay.
ahead.
No, so I just wanted to confirm that at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I wasn't going to quibble about the numbers, although I'm glad we did change the general counsel, because I've worked for companies where the general counsel actually got paid more than, some members of vice presidents, CEOs. Sometimes it just happens that way. But at the end of the day, this has to go to county council and they're going to approve it. So they could zero out some things.
Well, actually, they could. Two things will happen. We have the IBA is going to weigh in on the budget. And so they may have some, issues with our request. And then we have the budget hearings. We present to the city council on May the 11th. And then there also is a public hearing where the public has an opportunity to weigh in, and then the council, and then the mayor's office will revise their budget based on input from council members, the public, and the IBA, and the city council will vote on the final budget on June the 14th.
Okay.
So this basically is our request. The request. There will be feedback from the IBA and the city council. The mayor may change it, and so that's the process.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, because my follow-up my breakout from that question was, I wonder if during that process, they will let us know what shared services we have access to, because when we're talking about licenses, for example, I don't know what the process is, but I would imagine some of these things can be shared by San Diego just by virtue of us being associated with the county.
Yeah, well, and that's already included. The what was put there was additional software for the confidential documents, and I forget the name of the software they're looking at. So it's not something that's available currently from the city.
It's called Laserfish.
Okay, and that's different from getting access to like Microsoft Office and other types of software that everybody in the city has access to. Okay. And why is that number there say 16? Did I make a mistake somewhere? I did. And so that should be 35. I don't know why maybe I must have typed something wrong. Anyway. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to recommend this budget to the city as presented. Is there somebody who's willing to make that motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we can call the roll.
Don't we have comments first?
No, we already, well,
did.
I guess we did. Yeah, is there any additional comments? Okay, seeing none, we can go ahead and call the roll.
She's,
Charmaine, are you muted or?
Somebody just muted me. Okay, I think we still have to make some adjustments in this spreadsheet.
In terms of, yeah, I mean, with the adjustments, like in others, I need to do the fringe benefits and then figure out the,
Okay.
yeah, so the, maybe just, anyway, I will make the adjustments in item number 12 to figure out the pro rata and also put the fringe. So with that understanding, can we proceed with the vote?
Yes. Acting Chair Case.
I'm the chair, so I will abstain. I'm the acting, so I'll abstain.
you're allowed to vote.
Usually the chair only votes if it makes a difference in the outcome. So.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea. Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Dalva Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Pink.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and so thank you. And then our next item of business is the approval of the proposed outline of the investigation procedures. That also was sent out with the agenda, but there was a change made after it was sent out. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm not going to go over this in detail, but basically what we did was we defined investigation and investigative hearing, because that was a request that was made to us specifically from the city attorney, assistant city attorney who is drafting the ordinance. And then we identified the things related to investigations that we thought were important to include in the implementation ordinance, to include in standard operating procedures, which are approved by the city council, but don't have the force of law, if you will. It can be more easily changed. Those things that would be in a memorandum of understanding between the commission and the police department, and those things that the commission would establish as their own internal policies and procedures that they themselves, the commission itself, would be able to vote on and adopt without having to go through city council or any other body. And the change that was made was recommended at the ad hoc transition planning committee last Friday, and it's the last item here in red. And this, let me first explain it. Last year, the legislature approved a bill 1506, and it was signed by the governor, and it requires that all officer-involved shootings that involve the death of an unarmed civilian are required to be investigated by the state attorney general's office. And so we thought that it was important to include in our standard operating procedures exactly how the commission interfaces with the state attorney general's office. We included in here, how we would interface with the police department and homicide and so forth, but we did not include that, and so that's why that was added. And so at this point in time, let me go to I've lost my meeting controls. I'm going to stop sharing. So there they are. They're at the top. Okay. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to this item? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, and so we will go ahead and go to the commissioners. Is there any commissioners who wish to speak to the item? And I'm trying, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my screen here. Whose hand is raised? I see one hand raised.
Nancy.
Nancy, okay. It's not showing my whole screen here, but Nancy, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to make the motion that you have asked for to approve this procedure, this outline. I think you
Okay.
did a great job on it, and so I'm making the motion that we approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, I'm going to
Thanks,
stop
Mark.
sharing so I can see the meeting a little bit better. Okay, is there any further okay, so Nancy, is your hand still raised or?
Sorry.
Okay, and so I don't see any other hands raised, and so anybody else wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we can go ahead.
Wait, Doug. Let me make sure. Okay, on the second page,
Let me go back and share the screen again. Sorry about that.
it's above the red, the part you put in red. There's a paragraph there that I see 1 open paren and 2 closed parens. And I wasn't sure how that really was supposed to happen.
So which?
It's like the second bullet above the red.
Okay.
Okay, and I see 1 open and 2 closed parentheses.
Oh, okay. And so which one is correct?
Yes.
So
The second one is correct. You should take out the one after the word public.
Okay.
oops. Okay.
And then on the next page, the first bullet at the top of that page, it says evidence/information needed the commission to review. And I think we're missing
That should be the word for.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for catching those.
The
Okay.
long parentheses was actually removed from the previous one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was just noticing that. So the parentheses, Doug, should be here after the word public and before the comma, and then you should remove this one.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
But
sorry about that.
I was taking your word for it, Patrick, but
That's a good general rule, but not this time. Not this time.
okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, and so we have a motion with the amendments and seeing, I'm going to stop sharing so I can. Okay, so we'll go ahead and call the roll.
We have a second, Commissioner Workman.
Yes, second.
Okay, Commissioner Case.
I will abstain unless it makes a difference, which I don't think it will.
Okay. Commissioner Vaughn.
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch.
Yes.
Commissioner Halltroff.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Workman.
Yes.
Commissioner Dent.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington. Commissioner Harrington.
He may have stepped away.
I'll come back to him. Commissioner Shea. Commissioner Shea.
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor, Commissioner Taylor. Is he still on here?
No, he sent you a message. He had to leave the meeting.
Do you know what time he sent that message?
7:26 p.m.
I'm sorry. Yes. Vote is yes. My eye
Thank
just
you.
got unfrozen.
Thank you. Okay, that's noted. Commissioner Pink,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, so that concludes our new business and our action items. So if we can try to conclude as expeditiously as possible with the other items, which are our committee chair reports, chair's report, executive director's report, and the department report, that would be great. And so committee reports, continuing education. Nancy, do you have anything to report?
Not really. I'll request anybody who wants to learn about something to let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to start going to NACOL and getting some of their information to start us training in that direction. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, anything on outreach?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm talking to Kate Yavenditti about possibly co-hosting another roundtable with San Diegans for Justice. This would be about the job ads that the transition committee is now beginning to think about writing. Charmaine and I are going to start working on one that is for a staff member who's an executive assistant and also the community engagement person. And so I suggested that the community should be involved in writing that job ad. That also made me realize that I should probably pivot when it comes to the community roundtables and just start doing regular monthly roundtables to keep the public apprised of where things stand and what's going on. So Kate and I will talk again this week about setting up one for the community engagement job roundtable, where I'll also do an update, and then I'll meet with the outreach committee soon to start setting up monthly meetings with the public. That's it.
Okay, next is Rules Committee, and I chair that, and I will schedule a meeting sometime in May in enough time so that we can come back with the recommendation regarding a case review and reporting and presentation for next month's open meeting. There's nothing new on the CPP Handbook Committee, the Policy Committee. Brandon is still the chair of that, and I doubt that he's thinking about it much in Costa Rica. Kevin, do you have any update from recruitment and training?
Honestly, there's nothing to report.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's go back if we may.
Oh, do I forget something?
Yes, for the recruitment and training committee, we had a couple of trainings. There was one training that was scheduled on April 8th, and that was an update on virtual training on pretext stops, detentions, and arrests. And that was given to the new members as well as existing members by SDPD's Lieutenant Charles Lara. And then there was another training that was given at the Academy on Saturday, April 10th. And that was a training on use of force, body-worn camera video, and the I think it's the FACS simulator.
Okay. And those are mentioned on the agenda. Okay, the next item is the CAB meeting, the Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations. And Charmaine, I think, went to that meeting. And so Charmaine, do you mind giving us a very brief report?
I didn't go to the meeting, but I was able to watch it virtually, so that's good.
Okay.
So the executive director from CAB, at last week's meeting, they met on April 19th. The executive director encouraged CAB to go through the use of force training that SDPD has, as well as attend inside SDPD trainings. Also, community member Tasha Williamson participated as a guest speaker, and she spoke regarding Southeastern Division racial concerns. So that was, there was a lot of dialogue and conversations regarding that, her issues. There was also some discussion on Campaign Zero, on the Protect Initiative, as well as the mayor's release of policing priorities. At that meeting, they also went over their recommendations that they made 2 years ago. And they recommended that the ad hoc committee go over those recommendations again and bring it back to the board. And that completes, I hope that completes our report for CAB.
Okay, the next item is the ad hoc transition committee planning committee. We haven't been doing anything, so no. I think everybody saw that we had a city council meeting yesterday where they approved 3 items which had been previously approved by the PSNL committee, and that was creating the office of the Commission on Police Practices so we can get a budget and staff, hiring Charmaine Mosley as our interim executive director, and approving the interim standard operating procedures that we recommended. The next item or step in the process is going to be our budget hearing, and on May the 11th we'll be going and making a presentation before the budget review committee, which basically is a committee of the whole of the city council. And then our transition committee continues to meet every Friday. This coming Friday we're going to be discussing what the process should be when the commission and the department disagree on a finding and giving it in a particular case. And so I will give the chair's report. Just a reminder for everybody to submit your hours using the what's it called, Better Impact.
Better Impact.
Online. And so you need to keep, not only do you need to keep track of your hours on your each case, and in case you didn't notice, the timesheet for each of the cases is now part of the template at the very end of it. But it's important that everybody continue to keep track of all your hours volunteered to the commission on the online program to keep it up to date. It's best if you can do that on a regular basis. We mentioned here doing it quarterly, but it really is good if people can just keep it up to date on a regular basis. For example, every Friday afternoon, I go through and put down everything that I did for the previous week, so I don't forget it. And doing it at the same time each week makes it easy for me to remember to record everything. And so whatever system works best for you, but just remember to do it, because it's really important that we report out to the community, or the city council on the community, all of our volunteer time. I already gave the update on the city council meeting and the city budget hearing. The next item is a commission committee assignments. And especially for those new commissioners who have not yet signed up for a committee, one of the requirements of the bylaws is that every commissioner serve on at least one committee. And we now have 2 openings on the transition committee. And so if you're interested in working on that committee, you can let me or Brandon know. And just a reminder, that is a committee that does a lot of work. And so we meet every Friday at noon. And so if you're interested and are available for that, you can let me or Brandon know. And I don't think there's any other items or reminders. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Charmaine for the Executive Director's report.
Sure. So before I begin my report, I just want to thank Doug for all of his hard work, especially with the transition committee. You know, it's a huge undertaking to, I guess, go through the CRB transition into this new commission. So I think without Doug's leadership, we would be pretty much in a lot of in a lot of trouble. So I want to thank Doug for that, as well as thank him for helping move the budget along. That right there also is huge, because as far as budget goes, I'm really learning myself, you know, as far as the city budget process and hiring the admin aide, as well as hiring the executive assistant. It's not large, but it's a long process. We thought it might have been short, that we would have probably had 2 people on board May 1st, and May 1st is like right around the corner. And come to find out, it's gonna take a little bit longer. So thank you, Doug, so much for doing all you've been doing. I really appreciate you, as well as the commissioner, so thank you. So with that said, prior to tonight's closed meeting, we had 65 active cases assigned to the teams. The same time last month, we had approximately 68 cases assigned to the teams. So this number continues to remain constant. It's going back and forth, obviously. Out of the 65 active cases, we had 3 Category 1 cases that included an officer-involved shooting case tonight, and 3 Category 2 cases closed at our meeting earlier tonight as well. I have at least 6 reports that were given to me from Team 2 yesterday that I will read this week in preparation for next week's meeting. Out of the 65 active cases assigned to the teams, 28 have sustained findings. And I just wanted to also note that as we are continuing to do case review, internal affairs sergeants are continuing to investigate those cases. As of right now, well, I shouldn't say as of right now, as of late last week, they had 78 cases that they were working on. So those cases are gonna continue to eventually go to the teams. So we just have to keep that in mind as we're trying to reimagine how to do case review, how to do case presentations. Also, in this fiscal year, the same time last month, we had 87 cases that were closed by the board. Between the end of March and tonight, the commission reviewed and closed out 107 cases. Now that's a lot of cases compared to last year when that number was around 30 something. So before I go over the cases assigned to the teams, I wanted to note that we've had a couple of changes within the teams. Team 6 no longer has a team lead. So we had to temporarily reassign Commissioner Pink to Team 1 for training purposes. Additionally, Team 5 was made inactive again for at least 2 weeks. I will discuss the training of Commissioner Chan with the chair upon his return from vacation in Costa Rica. So I'm making a list for Commissioner Hilpert. I'm writing down everything for him, so when he returns, I'll hand it over to him. So the statistics for the team assignments are as follows. I have my list here. Team 1, they were assigned 12 cases. 1 case was an reassignment that was sent to the team in November for further review. And that case is past the 1-year deadline. So any updates? And I think Commissioner Fitch was working on that case.
And Doug presented it originally when we presented it in November.
So any updates on it? I know they were getting close to finishing it.
It's the Bibbs case, Doug. I don't even know what we're supposed to do. It got sent back to the team and I don't know what we're supposed to do with it.
It's updated and I sent it back to you all some time ago for review. There's maybe 1 open question on it, but it's ready to go. You're welcome to jump in there and take a look at it.
Okay, all right, we'll do that this weekend.
Okay, so it's to the team, not to me, right? Correct? Yes. Okay. Excellent.
It's with the team, Sherman.
Okay, thank you. So the team has 2 cases and 5 cases have sustained findings. Team 1 also has 2 disciplines to evaluate. So I encourage the team to at least evaluate those disciplines and let me know when they're done. Does that sound about correct? Commissioner?
Yes, so IA took back one of our cases today. And
Yes.
so that reduces the number. We presented one today, so that reduces our number.
Mhm.
The
I did-
last case assigned should be in blue. It's a Cat 2.
Okay. Yes, I made that correction. I noticed that today.
Okay. And we're working, we have 2 cases with sustained findings that we're working on, one with sustained findings that we're ready to go, and I'm waiting for IA to update their report. Is that something that I have to do? We have to wait for IA to make the change in their report before we present it? They've agreed to it. It's just they haven't changed. I have been not notified that they have changed the report.
Can we hear from Internal Affairs? Is that something we can do to move the case along?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is Lieutenant Schlosky.
Right.
Nancy, that change has been made and Detective Amato has already uploaded into your file. It happened later this afternoon.
Okay, when I looked the other day, it wasn't changed, so I'll go check that and then we can submit it for the next meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. So I guess that's it for Team 1. And also, let me just thank Commissioner Vaughn for agreeing to train Commissioner Pink. So now she has 2 commissioners to train, and I guess between her and Commissioner Anderson, they will do a double team and train them and get them up and ready. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
We're all good.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Team 2, they were assigned 11 cases. 6 were Cat 2 cases. 2 cases were previously heard by the commission and sent back to the team for revisions. I believe one of them was what was on the agenda tonight. Does it sound about correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And also 2 cases were on tonight's agenda for deliberation and closed out. 5 cases have sustained findings, and the team has no OIS or in custody death cases. The team also has 1 discipline to evaluate. Does that sound about correct?
No, I saw 3 and I've evaluated all 3 of them already.
Oh, there's 3. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna need those numbers. So when you get a chance, can you send me the case numbers
Sure.
for those 3 disciplines? Great, thank you. Team 3, they were assigned 8 cases. Of the 8 cases, 2 were category 2 cases, 2 cases have sustained findings, and 2 cases were on tonight's agenda for deliberation and closed out. The team has 1 officer-involved shooting case and no in-custody death cases. Team 3 has 5 disciplines to evaluate. Does that sound about correct, Commissioner Workman?
Yes, I believe so.
Excellent. I'm sure you're ready for your vacation.
Yes.
Thank you for all your hard work in moving those cases along.
Yeah, we have a couple that'll be complete probably in a day or so.
Wow, thank you so much. Team 4, they were assigned 11 cases. They have no officer-involved shooting cases or in-custody death cases. 2 are category 2 cases, and 6 cases have sustained findings. The team had 1 case on tonight's agenda, and the team has 1 shooting review board report to evaluate. Does that sound about correct?
Wait a second. We didn't have a case on tonight's agenda for Team 4. And
You know what I was thinking? I'm sorry, I was thinking Team 1. I was still thinking you're on Team 1. My apologies.
okay, we don't have an officer involved shooting either, right?
No officer-involved shooting and no in custody death cases.
Okay. And then a question quickly for Nancy from Team 1. There were 2 disciplines that were left from my time on Team 1, and you were going to talk to Internal Affairs. Did you have those, or actually try to talk to the captains of the divisions? Did you have a chance to do that yet, Nancy?
No, I have not. I will work on that tomorrow. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. Can I move on?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Team 5. Team 5 is now inactive, as I mentioned previously. They will be remain inactive for, I can't even talk, for 2 weeks. One case has a pressing deadline, and that was reassigned to Team 3. The team now has 4 cases. One case is a Category 1, and one case has a sustained finding. The team has no officer-involved shooting and no in-custody death cases. Team 5 has 1 shooting review board report and 1 discipline to evaluate. Commissioner Smith, does that sound about correct? Commissioner Smith or Commissioner Clark?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, if you say so, I'll really go along with that. I haven't really had a chance to do too much.
Okay. I'll circle back within the, I guess, the end of this week with the team. Team 6 has 12 cases. Of the 12 cases, 5 has sustained findings. 1 case is an officer-involved shooting case, which was on tonight's meeting agenda and deliberated on and closed out by the commission. 3 cases are Cat 2s. The team does not have any in-custody death cases, and the team also has 2 disciplines to evaluate. Team 6, does that sound about correct?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Team 7, well, that's the chair's team. It's his training team. So he has 4 cases with sustained findings. And I think before he went on vacation, he said most of those cases were done. 3 of the cases are past the 1-year deadline. 1 case is a Category 2. And as I mentioned previously, this team is a training team as well. So any questions regarding the case assignments? Excellent, I can move on. The next item is status of work accounts. So I'm just checking in on the status of the work accounts, San Diego.gov accounts that were assigned to all the commissioners I believe it was like 2 or 3 months ago. How is that going? Are all the commissioners using their San Diego.gov accounts? Because I do want to be able to switch over and not use the personal account.
You mean email?
Yes, San
Things like that?
Diego.gov.
Yes, even I am using it.
Okay, good. So I can just switch over then, and because all emails will be going to all of the Commissioner San Diego.gov accounts. Excellent. I already mentioned the administrative support, which was item D. So I won't do that again. And the last item I have is the Mako conference update. So I updated on this item 2 months ago. As I mentioned previously, I am on the NACO Conference Planning Committee again. This year, we're going to have two conferences. The first conference is going to be virtual, and that's going to be held August 16th through October 7th. And the second conference will be a smaller in-person conference, and that's going to be scheduled from December 13th through the 16th in Tucson, Arizona. We reviewed over 60 proposals that were submitted for consideration, and each week we'll have a theme such as reform and innovation, jail and prison oversight. They're bringing back that track, strengthening the work of oversight, and collaboration. So as soon as I receive the registration details, I'll forward it out to the commissioners, and we will have a final schedule on May 19th for the conferences. And I don't have any other items or reminders, so that concludes my report.
Okay, and this is our next item is the police department to report, and we don't have Executive Assistant Chief Guadarrama here tonight, so I'll call on Captain Holden to give the police department report.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, commissioners. We are, what I'd like to report is that obviously we've received the commission's policy recommendations. It's quite extensive, not only on our protest policy, but also it touches on a number of other policies and procedures. Those have been sent out to the originating units for review and for consideration. So as we get responses back from those units, I will keep the commission updated on those. Thank you.
Okay, and do you want to make an announcement regarding the retirement of the Executive Assistant Chief?
Yes, I confirm Chief Guadarrama will be retiring on May 20th. The process is still active as far as selecting who will be replacing Chief Guadarrama, but he will, his last day is slated for May 20th.
Okay, and so that'll be before our next open meeting. If you could share with him the appreciation that I and the cabinet, and I'm sure all the commissioners have, for his collaborative approach to working with the commission. He certainly has been an executive assistant chief that has not only listened, but has gone back and discussed things with the leadership and, come back to the commission with feedback. And so we really appreciate his approach and his collaborative, collaborative approach, and we're going to miss him.
Thank you very much for that, Doug. I will pass that along to him. I've worked for Chief Guadarrama on and off for well over 20 years, and he has always operated that way, and he will be missed. Thank you.
Okay, so we have no ride-alongs because ride-alongs are on hold. Are there any commissioner announcements or comments? Okay, seeing none, it is 7:58, so we are actually going to finish this meeting at 2 minutes early. And so thank you, everybody. It was a good discussions tonight, and we got a lot accomplished. And so with that,
I know Commissioner Craver will be happy.
and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
And moved by Nancy, seconded by Poppy. Okay. All those in favor, click on leave the meeting. So good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
They all do.
Good meeting.